The year is 1914. We are time tripping. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand.
Alright, Sam, Johnny, what 2 items have we brought back from the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, 1914? Johnny, what have you swiped?
So, when the car was driving past, something really struck me about it, and that was the number plate. So, in the commotion, I jimmied the license plate off, and the license plate, again, we talked a little bit about odd omens, and this license plate is a really weird one, because it reads A111118, and that spells out A, if we think of A for armistice, and then 11/11/18, the 11th day of the 11th month, 1918. Like, it's a little bit weird, isn't it, to have a number plate A11/11/18 for the man who was shot, who started it. So some people like to pin the American number plates up on their wall. I'm going to pin this number plate up.
What about you, Sam? What have you got in your pockets as
Franz Ferdinand's moustache, which I would then frame and then sell at auction.
Political tensions in Europe finally boil over when Serbian nationalist Gavrilo Princip shoots dead the Austro-Hungarian leader while he tours Sarajevo. This act of political violence will spark a diplomatic crisis, escalating tensions between European powers and culminating in a devastating global conflict that will reshape the course of your history.
When does it become a world war, then?
Well, that is a question for both world wars that you can write, I think, quite... You can go all around the houses. I saw a thing of J.P. Taylor talking about it, because it depends, obviously, on what you define as world, etc. I won't try and paraphrase. It's not going well.
I think, people point the finger at almost arbitrarily. I've heard people claim that the World War One started in 1912 with the wars in the Balkans, which was kicking off exactly because of all this, and there was a lot of shit throwing and small scale conflicts between the modern day Balkan states all around.
That seems less arbitrary than some other proposals, I think.
And German enlargement, of course, and and British and all and
Russian,
all the great powers.
Yes, I mean,
we've been covering it all. Yes.
Well, it's nice and neat to point the finger at Gavrilo and say he was the one that started it.
Oh, wait, I was going to say
fatal shots.
I was going to say he definitely was him who shot him, wasn't it?
Mm. But also you could, if your point, Johnny, that we could blame masculinity in general for creating someone like Gavrilo Princip, who, when I was reading about him, seems quite similar to you could imagine him enjoying Andrew Tate these days. He seems like he seems like a lost young man.
Typical young student radical, Bosnian Serb, I believe. I found one before we blast off to the assassination scene, while we're floating in space in our time machine, which you can see in our vidcast if you tune in on YouTube. I found a lovely little Reddit post, and someone had just posted the picture of Gavrilo after he's obviously been really roughed up and tortured, saying, "It's Gavrilo hot?" ? And then someone replied saying, "Yeah, if you like the type that hasn't slept for nights."
That's nice, yeah.
So he's a bit of a gilf.
Well, everyone's got their type, don't they?
He wouldn't have been a G then, would he?
Gavrilo.
Yeah, he wouldn't have been a grandfather then.
No, but he was a Gavrilo.
So.
Everyone's got their type. Some like the
Yes.
assassins, some like the
Oh, that's a good
heads of state.
segue, isn't it? Because we know that our Franz Ferdinand II had a type, a love whom he gave up a lot of prestige and political credit to marry Sophia, I believe her.
Yeah, he was definitely in love, I think, with Sophia, because he put up with quite a lot when he married her. He was, I believe, like mocked a little bit within the court for marrying below his status.
Yes.
And his uncle really didn't like it. He was really put his nose out of joint, and he said that she could never even sort of be in the same room as him when he's on official royal business.
Yeah, in fact, when they have the funeral of Franz and Sophia in Vienna in 1914, the Viennese aristocracy, amongst other people and the heads of states, do loads of horrible snubs because of it. We'll come to that at the end.
Yeah. And he was only heir, of course, due for tragic. He was heir for tragic reasons, right? Because the emperor's son committed suicide, I believe.
Franz Ferdinand himself was quite unpopular with a lot of factions within the Austro-Hungarian Empire because he was actually quite pro, like, making alliances and building bridges and less militaristic, I believe. So I think his uncle actually really hated him and did not want the succession to go to him. So actually after the killing, apparently his uncle said privately he was glad that it missed him out and skipped to the next one. So there's quite a lot of dark stuff going on.
He was in favour of greater centralisation, I think, was he not? Archduke Franz Ferdinand. I don't know what I'm talking about.
You're
really.
half Hungarian, though, aren't you?
That's true.
That's a reference point. Well, chaps, shall we fancy kicking the machine into gear and seeing what's going on in Sarajevo, 1914?
Watch out for stray grenades, though.
Time shifters.
Unfortunately, by travelling back in time, we've denied ourselves the pleasures of looking at Gavrilo Princip tattoos, which is something of a phenomenon we can return to later.
That's okay, we can, just let me know and we can bring them up in...
Do you know what's significant about the date, June 28th? Why this is so important?
No.
So who, important given what? Who?
Important in the context, like why Franz Ferdinand is there, why he is visiting. He's sort of there for like some military tour and to like present himself as part of Austro-Hungarian Empire and to have a little like review of the armed forces. But he's scheduled this visit at quite a poor time because June 28th, the day of his assassination, that's the anniversary of the First Battle of Kosovo, which was way back in 1389. And medieval Serbia, which was quite powerful at that time, like middling power, was defeated by the Turks. And that was seen as a very dark day. And Serbia, the Serbian nationalists particularly, they held a grudge. And they were taking exception to the fact that there was this show of Austrian imperial strength in Bosnia on this anniversary. But interestingly, it wasn't the only anniversary. It was also Franz Ferdinand's wedding anniversary. We mentioned his beloved wife, Sophie, who was this former lady-in-waiting who'd been denied the royal status in Austria because she didn't have quite enough noble blood. I mean, she was pretty noble, but like only a noble since the 14th century or something, so not true Habsburg noble. But regardless of this was like one of the first times that she was allowed to appear with Franz Ferdinand in public, because it wasn't technically a royal visit where she wasn't allowed to because her uncle hated her. But rather it was like a military thing, so she was allowed to go out with him. And it was their wedding anniversary, so they were happily going around Sarajevo together. It was meant to be quite a nice little bonding exercise for them.
As you say, it was as well, as you say, a provocation from, not provocation, but a show of the strength and power in a sort of unstable place. Wearing a hat like that. Very silly.
But I think they were sort of recognising that it was inflammatory as well. Franz Ferdinand was saying, joking before, they might throw bombs at us, before he went on his tour of the city. And they did have, a security detail, but they messed it up constantly. They removed some at the last minute, some fell ill. So they promoted local policemen instead of having their proper security details. So in the end, they only had one proper bodyguard.
An open-top car, you are trying to show that you're in control. If you drove around in an armoured vehicle, it wouldn't look great.
Perhaps we look at it from our modern day politicians, where everyone is really heavy security detail.
Yeah.
But I guess that even up until I think it was the attempted assassination on Pope John Paul II, that's when they started taking it seriously and boxing in cars and making them a bit less open.
That's when they started boxing in the Pope's car, I think. But I think, am I right? Maybe not.
Well, I mean,
JFK?
US president doesn't go around like Kennedy does anymore in the open-top parades or anything.
No,
they've learned their lesson. I assume.
Took a long time.
Yeah, most dignitaries now don't go around in open-top cars because of this obvious assassination threat. It was a little bit inflammatory to be out in this tinder keg area, which we already said had a lot of battles going on, smaller battles between all the different ethnicities in this area. Everyone is sort of fighting at this point. There are real tensions, and he's driving around exacerbating the tensions, expecting to be welcomed by the crowds, clapping him in, which to some extent they were, but there were within this 7 assassins hid in the crowd.
Such has been the time as well, I suppose, with all of these big shows of strength from all the great powers, like the British winding up the Boers and all of it. We've seen it all unfold before our bloody eyes. It's also
brushing the Boers from their clothes.
I mean, the region of Bosnia was only annexed quite recently from 1908, and I'm sure you remember what was going on in 1908, Phil, in relatively close proximity to this.
What
if I hum a little line? Oh
yeah, the Young Turks Revolution. So you're referring to the Ottoman Empire's ongoing conflict with Austria-Hungary over this Bulgaria and Russia, as well, over Bulgaria and Albania and Balkan states.
I mean, it's a mess of alliances, but I think following the Young Turk Revolution, Bosnia sort of was annexed by Austria-Hungary. The point is you've got lots of different empires vying for control of this area, not just Austria-Hungary sort of coming into the Balkans, flexing its muscle, but the Russian Empire also sort of promoting Serbia. It's long been a promoter of Serbia. People are saying, Serbia's hand in hand with Russia nowadays, but that goes way back. And then you've got the Ottoman Empire in the decline.
You mentioned the Archduke making a comment about hand grenades, and that was, of course, after his first kind of swoop of the town before one of the 6 assassins chucked a hand grenade at at the car, which I believe bounced off and blew up the car behind it, at which point the car sped off and they went to visit another stop. And then he burst in, the Archduke, complaining to the mayor of the town that he's like, I come here and you welcome me with hand grenades. And apparently just literally burst in and started shouting at the mayor and dressing him down in front of everyone. You can start to see how these crowned heads of Europe, if they're not losing their heads, or at least being turned on in quite a lot of parts of the world.
I think having a grenade tossed at you, though, that allows you to vent a little bit and to be a bit stressed. And
Interesting.
I've got a quote from Borijovo Yevtich, one of the conspirators, and he was caught and he gave some testimony about this first grenade throw. And he says, when the car passed Gabrinovich, the compositor, he threw his grenade. It hit the side of the car, but Franz Ferdinand, with presence of mind, threw himself back and was uninjured. Several officers riding in his attendance were injured. So I've heard also that the driver, the chauffeur, should get some credit here. He's not going to get all the credit today, but he gets a little bit of credit here because he saw this would-be first assassin, the nationalist Gabrinovich. He saw him throw the grenade and he sped up a little bit. So if he hadn't sped up at that point, it might not have bounced off the top of the car and hit the car behind.
And if you've played Worms, you know the frustration of just missing the right angle with your little grenade.
It was a near miss, and as noted, there were some injuries, the officers behind. And that actually prompted Franz, later in the day, he asked about the condition of these wounded officers and was told, oh yeah, they're in a bit of a mess, they've just been naded. And he then insisted on visiting them in hospital. So, give him some credit where he's due. He may have shouted at the mayor, but he also is quite concerned about his officers.
Can I quickly proffer, though, that this is basically all a lot of these figures can do is visit hospitals and stuff. It's like now where something happens and they bundle the royal family out. We can't give them too much credit.
You've got to remember that this is a man who joined the army and then was promoted to the rank of lieutenant at the age of 14, and then became a captain at the age of 22, a colonel at 27, and a major general by 31. I mean, this is obviously a man of considerable talent, Archduke Franz Ferdinand. So presence of mind to avoid grenades and to respond diplomatically to various people in his day-to-day life. I would have thought, and to make sensible judgments.
We've got the head of security for Franz Ferdinand, General Oskar Potiorek. And he actually overrules a member of his staff who suggests that the journey to the hospital might be a little bit dangerous considering that a grenade has just been thrown. And he says, do you think Sarajevo is full of assassins? And big spoiler, yes, it actually was, because as we identified, 6, maybe 7 of them.
Yes.
So yeah, his head of security is saying, yeah, whatever, go ahead and visit your officers in hospital. Again, give a little bit of credit to General Potiorek. He did say that maybe Sophie should remain behind, but she said, as long as the Archduke shows himself in public today, I will not leave him. And they decide to take a direct route, so they can, rather than go slowly through the streets, they can speed along. Like relative speed, however fast cars can go at this time. But General Potiorek, once again, he drops the ball and forgets to tell the driver that they're taking a different route. So the driver takes the old route that he thinks they're going to take through the narrow side streets. And it's a bit of an accident, really. They end up where they do, at this junction, where 19-year-old Gavrilo Princip is loitering. And General Potiorek shouts, "What's this? It's the wrong way! Turn around!" And so the driver brakes suddenly in this side street, begins to back up, and this is just the perfect opportunity for Princip. And he can't believe his luck because he thinks that that the opportunity's gone when the first grenade misses. And now they're literally presented to him, like reversing slowly, and he can't really miss and fires 2 shots into Franz Ferdinand and 2 into Sophie at point blank range. And yeah, the rest is history, as they say.
Princip was not executed, which surprises me. Instead, he was imprisoned.
He wasn't executed though, because I think he was too young by the laws of the day.
History repeats repeats itself, repeats itself. History repeats itself, repeats itself. History repeats itself, repeats itself. History
Of course, every Serbian nationalist worth their salt has a tattoo of Gavrilo Princip. That's something that we've established. So I thought I'd set up a little quiz called Gavrilo or Gavril No. They're all tattoos of famous faces. I've put moustaches on them all to make it harder. So you've got to tell me Gavrilo or Gavril No. Is it Gavrilo Princip or someone else? And then you get bonus points for guessing who it is.
I understand.
So we'll kick off with you, Sam. Top left, Gavrilo or Gavril No?
Gavrilo.
Correct. Gavrilo. Next one along, Johnny. Gavrilo or Gavril No?
Gavril No.
Great. Do you know who it is?
I've not a clue.
So,
Is it Daniel Day-Lewis?
no, it does look like him though. Especially with the moustache. Right. This is really good for listeners, this game. Okay, it's actually the actor Robert Pattinson. It's a tattoo of Robert Pattinson from Twilight.
That's Gavrilo. That's a tattoo I remember. In fact,
Yes,
I think
that's what I remember. I remember it as well.
if you can see a pistol, like the one in the middle to the right, it's probably going to be Gavrilo.
Yes, and the one above, and the one above the pistol armed tattoo, I think is also Gavrilo.
That's not Gavrilo. That looks like David Beckham.
Oh no! Remember that there's kind of a kind of implausible variation in pictures of Gavrilo Princip.
Yeah, and tattoos, don't forget. They look like pictures on the presentation quiz sheet, but they are all tattoos. They're all from people's bodies.
The one bottom centre is Gavrilo.
How do you know it's from a bottom?
Sorry, the weird spider one.
Yeah, Gavrilo or Gavril No?
I'm gonna guess spider. Maybe there's something. Yeah, I'm gonna say Gavrilo. Maybe there's a spider black hand association of which I'm unaware. Something.
I'm afraid the correct answer is Ryan Gosling, the celebrity.
Okay. Right.
Okay, next one along, Johnny.
I think that's Al Pacino.
Correct, it's Pacino.
Oh,
Not directly below Pacino, but one more. Below, two below.
I think there are two Pacinos.
surely one of those is John Cleese, Johnny.
Yeah, one is John Cleese and one is Gavrilo. I think it should be evident which is which.
It's Sean Connery.
Oh,
It's really bad.
I was gonna guess. I was gonna guess Al Capone, so it is pretty awful.
It's Ian Curtis from Joy Division.
That is, yeah, that's a good one. That's the most challenging, I think. Because the others there was kind of greater thematic continuity. You've got some Hollywood actors, you've got the Bonds, and then you've got Joy Division. Who, of course, if you were to make a film, I think if one were to make a film dramatising the assassination, the music of Joy Division would be a good choice.
20th century, year by year, 20th century, you must do about girl.
It was a marriage of love, which was quite rare at that time in the aristocratic circles. And Franz Ferdinand himself writes that By far the cleverest thing I did in my life was to marry my Sophie. She is everything for me, my wife, my doctor, my advisor. In a word, my whole happiness. And there are children.
It surprises me that he would speak English.
He was, probably like the Kaiser, well versed in a few languages. Heavily accented, of course.
I wonder if he did speak English. It wouldn't surprise me if he didn't. I mean, he's probably got others. He's got to prioritize others. I assume he's got to. Presumably, you've got to know, a bunch of Slavic languages: Hungarian, Italian.
I think he was educated. Where was he? Was he educated at Bonn with the liberal Germaners? No. Hang on.
I'm not sure. I don't know if the French was still the lingua franca at that point. Probably. If you're an aristocrat, you start learning some French. I would expect also you have some English if you're a German speaker, because German and English are pretty similar.
Well, we've got a Quora search, but
he was much less reactionary, wasn't he, than his uncle and his brother who killed himself.
He was definitely more of a modern man of the empire, less reactionary, a bit less conservative, perhaps even you could say. But what does conservative mean at that point?
From what I know, it's probably fairer to characterise Franz Joseph as conservative rather than reactionary, because during his reign there were significant constitutional reforms in Austria-Hungary, including the creation of Austria-Hungary.
But it was sort of on the decline, wasn't it? To a degree, they were a bit jumpy. Hence, this being an ideal spark for a probably inevitable powder keg.
Yeah,
maybe.
There was something of a power vacuum at the time in that area, because, as we discussed a few podcasts ago, the Ottoman Empire was very much fading, the sick man of Europe at that time. The German power was on the rise, and certainly the Balkans were a powder keg. Austria-Hungary wasn't as powerful as it was, particularly the Hungarian power was weakening. You had greater rights being advocated for the Slavs and the Czechs as well, of which Franz Ferdinand, he actually supported that cause to some extent.
So he married one, didn't he?
The triune monarchy.
I didn't mean to say it like that. He married a Czech.
Although Johnny, on the other hand, some historians like Judson and others have revised this view and pointed at kind of massive economic growth in Austria-Hungary in that part of the century. So on the eve of World War One, it was economic development was comparable to France, and incomes were comparable to France. Also, economic historians now argue. Third largest machine producing country in the world after Germany and the UK. More industry than France and Italy, but weaknesses in investment in the military, which is partly a result of the dual monarchy. In the military, the KUK military was funded by agreement between the Austrian and Hungarian sides, and each side was in fact more interested in funding the respective domestic militaries that they had. So they had difficulty raising a budget basically to fund the military. But in terms of economic development and cultural development, historians these days seem to be challenging the view of decline, which was popular, of course, after World War One, and is much more popular in the English-speaking world than in other parts of the world.
What did I parrot that from? Maybe AJP Taylor, who I've listened to a devastatingly too large amount of this afternoon.
Could be. I mean, I think there's just reasonable disagreement among historians, but that the idea that it was in as bad shape as the Ottoman Empire, I think there's now kind of a consensus that that's not the case.
Oh, yeah,
And,
yeah. I'm not saying it was as bad as the Ottoman Empire. I'm just saying it wasn't as strong as the German, and it didn't quite have full control of the borderlands, because the Ottoman Empire receding from that area had left this sort of hotbed of nationalism and revolutionary fervour that we're seeing kicking off, particularly in the Balkans. And you just had a Balkan War going on from like 1912 to 1913, when they're fighting mainly against the Ottomans, and the Austrian-Hungarian Empire has sort of swept in and mopped up a little bit and taken over a few new territories. But in addition to the changing of power structures, you have also got all the nationalism kicking off as well, and they can't quite keep the lid on it. So yes, silly idea to visit Sarajevo at this time.
Yeah. Although, again, people do say the nationalism is exaggerated, and that to some degree that's kind of retrospective. The retrospective exaggeration of nationalism by the successor states. So on the eve of following the declaration of war, there were massive rallies in Prague and Budapest and Vienna in support of the war. There's relatively little desertion at the beginning of the war, certainly. You have large numbers of people volunteering from all ethnicities. So it's not, I do, from what, I'm not an expert, but from what I've read,
I've been shot. Hello? I've been shot. Hello? Someone help us, please. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I think it's an interesting area, I think, of debate between historians. Like I say, it does seem as if there's still kind of genuine and reasoned disagreement between historians as to what people's attitudes towards the empire were. And I think also, to some degree...
They were all jumpy as well, not just Austro-Hungary.
But I think also, though, to some degree, people, at least in the popular... In kind of the popular reception as well of the period, I think sometimes English speakers are misled by the kind of the names of these places, like the German Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And while, of course, in the German case particularly, they were Germanizing Poles, these were not empires in the sense of, the British Empire or the French Empire, where they had the constituent parts of Austria-Hungary were not colonial subjects in the same sense.
City-states.
Yeah. They were called. It was called an empire because it had an emperor, not because that's not because it's. But I think people kind of have this. People often have this view that the status of minorities within the empire who were not German speakers was kind of tantamount to the status of kind of black people in the British Empire in Africa, say, which is not the case, obviously. And if you look at the kind of the names of generals and officers in the military in World War One, it's very kind of it's very diverse. You've got a lot of Polish and Czech and Hungarian names in there as well, of course.
So I've mentioned that Franz Ferdinand was quite a family man, but what about the rest of his character? Any thoughts?
I hear he was interested in blood sports, particularly hunting.
He was, yes. He had two great interests outside of politics and the military. One was roses. Big fan of roses. He had a beautiful rose garden and tended various cultivars. And the other was like the opposite of a peaceful, tranquil gardening hobby. It was murdering animals. And he was a prodigious hunter. There are like records of exactly what he shot, because he keeps like a diary or a journal of everything, and literally everything he shoots. And if you sum it up, it's over 270,000 animals, which is quite impressive considering that his life was cut short. So people have crunched some numbers, and they've theorized that in order to hit that amount, he would have had to start shooting around the age of 10 or so and kill 22 animals a day on average to stay on track.
Mm.
And
I take it though that he did. He like everyone when they're trying to reach a target. He had his off days. Probably he had days where he killed hundreds of animals,
herded them all into a pen and killed them.
Yeah.
What was he worse than the other crowned heads at the time, Johnny, for this sort of stuff? It's quite common thread, wasn't it? Commonplace.
It's funny that you characterise it as was he worse or was he better? You are right. Everyone liked to shoot at that time, including his uncle Franz Joseph. He was a big hunter. This is a guy who had 48,000 registered kills to his name, but he described his nephew's hunting madness as literally that, as a mania. And he just thought it was really weird that he would like to hunt to such an extent. Basically, anything that moved, Franz Ferdinand would shoot. And he went on a whole world tour in, I think, 1892 to 93, just purely to hunt. Hunting was his thing. As you say, Sam, he maybe killed hundreds of animals in some day. He didn't just stick to that average. We have records of what his best day was, and that's a staggering 2,000 odd animals, 2,140 kills in one day. And I worked out that there are 1,440 minutes in a day. So even if he's putting in a long day of hunting, that's an animal every 30 seconds he's killing.
Well,
And
which animal or animals? Well, so what was he?
Now you've got him going. He's got
that's a fair point.
He's got like
fair point.
I'm just thinking about the feasibility constraints here, because I take it if the arithmetic's true, that's not going to be kind of gazelles, right? It's got to be what is he killing in such large quantities?
I'm glad you raised that, because it does consist, when we look at his journal, that the animals consist mainly of birds, like pheasants and partridges, typical game animals. And very often there would be beaters, like he'd turn up on an estate and it was pretty much like clay pigeon shooting for him. All the beaters would come out and he'd hang out with his buddies, and the servants would be supplying and reloading guns. And he's just there literally popping the birds as they come.
Yeah.
He was a good shot as well, so it was pretty easy for him. But his accomplices made it extremely easy. Like when he went to Poland once, they herded all the bison in the Polish forest into his sites, and 2 of his trips almost sufficed to bring the European bison to the point of extinction. There were people saying that because he was like a big modernizer, that he may have deployed machine guns at times. He was quite a fan of the military and technology, so it's entirely plausible that he was just mowing down animals with machine guns.
We've talked a bit before about Prince Albert, Queen Victoria's husband's rapacious hunting habits. It ended up being a common trend, especially in his neck of the woods, apparently, whereas like the British had an idea of fair play. I'm not suggesting it actually was fair play, but
and queuing, I suppose.
But yeah, I mean, it's just incredible. Also, the range of animals he shot. He went to Australia. You might be interested to know, Sam, as you live there. So, name me an Australian animal, and I'm pretty sure that Franz Ferdinand would have shot it.
Oh, koala.
8 of them, including a baby.
You see, that really, they're such slow, dopey animals that does, the fact that he shoots koala does seem to imply that there's something going on, as his uncle believed, beyond the thrill and the kind of nobility and dignity of say, hunting wolves or something.
Yeah. His castle in the Czech Republic, I think it's called Konopiste or something, was stuffed with upwards of 100,000 animals. So I think he was very much like of the idea that he wanted to shoot nearly any animal that he could see. If it was a new animal, he would shoot it, regardless of whether it's a slow-moving koala or a quick-moving gazelle, whether it's a placid and docile platypus. He shot a platypus.
You see, I was about to ask, did he shoot a platypus? And given that that must have been something of a challenge. I assume he kind of hung around a kind of littoral or fluvial environment, waiting for one to emerge.
Probably
rather than
I would imagine so. Yeah,
rather
that
than
would have been a more
shooting it through
difficult
the
shot
water
than the koala.
Yeah.
Definitely a tricky shot.
So, Johnny, when you began this section on hunting, you used the verb murdered, which implies that you take a dim view of his activities.
And the bison you kill with a smile.
Let me tell you, Sam.
I'm not sure I agree it was murder, given the kind of legal and moral status of the animals in question. But of the animals he killed, which do you believe had the greatest moral status? In other words, which crime was his greatest? Did he kill, for example, did he kill a chimpanzee?
I don't know where you're going with this, Sam, but
I'm sure he did.
I will be refuting you on a number of counts here. First of all, the moral and legal status was, opaque in many countries, or free for all in most of them, in fact. But he did take one trip to Yellowstone in this world tour, and he was forbidden point blank from shooting anything there. He was told, this is a national park, Franz, sorry, put your guns away. And he was a little bit put out about this, but he had to hand over his guns. However, he did find, along with his buddies, a porcupine, some squirrels, and I believe a skunk, and he beat them to death with sticks.
Oh,
that was pretty murderous. When it comes...
And the skunk that you beat with a stick.
When
it's not natural kind. It's a murder. Sorry, Jimmy.
There's an interesting story that leads into the legend of his death. In 1913, August 27th, he was out hunting in the Eastern Alps of southern Austria, where he shot a white stag. And this is entirely verboten under Austrian hunting mythology, that if you shoot a white stag, then you or a close relative will die within a year. And a few weeks even before he left for Sarajevo, he actually took this stag down from his trophy wall. He was a little bit freaked out, perhaps, by the legacy. And in fact, Sophie, upon when he's shooting it, she said, Franzi, why did you kill the white stag? It will bring bad luck. And his answer was, don't worry, there is always a reason why one has to die one day. All of this is recorded. It's sort of like a fantastic circularity, like some cosmic karma, that the man who has killed, or is certainly on track to kill the most animals in the world, is also going to be gunned down. If he lives by the bullet, he will die by the bullet.
It is, though, Johnny, that's very nice, by the way, but is it a lot of it back projected just because of what sort of happened afterwards? Do we project a lot of cosmic energy onto it when it was just sort of,
We could do, but I will bring back another part of the cosmic curse that he's brought upon himself by shooting so many animals. And his final animal that he killed, just days before he left for Sarajevo, was a cat, possibly a black cat. He was sitting in his car and he saw a cat, just a regular domestic cat, leaned out of the window with a pistol and shot it. And that was his last journal entry in this book of death. Now, cats crossing your path can be bad luck. I'm sure if you shoot one, that's even more bad luck.
I'm glad the bastard's dead, to be honest.
So yeah, I think he had it coming in a way.
Yeah.
You can't kill so many things and expect to get away with it.
he was himself very superstitious and wore good luck charms underneath his shirt and stuff, apparently.
Have you seen the picture of him where he's posing as a mummy in A Visit to Cairo? Because that's well worth a look. He's sort of
Let's pop it up.
Was a thing among aristocrats, who were mainly the ones who were tourists in this day and age, to get a picture of you as a souvenir when you went to Egypt as a mummy. And yeah, it's sort of a memento mori, you might say, to reflect the fact that you are only on this earth for so long, and sooner or later you will die. But what's really interesting is that this picture of Franz Ferdinand as a mummy is kept in his ancestral castle beneath the bullet that killed him. Competing alliances, once Franz Ferdinand is shot, they all begin to unravel or to antagonise each other, because obviously Austria responds very angrily and declares war on Serbia, who it blames. Germany supports Austria. Russia supports Serbia. Then Germany, seeing a chance to expand its power further east, declares war on Russia. Technically, Britain is allied with Russia, so then Britain declares war on Germany, and France joins in. And yeah, it's amazing how from this one bullet, a world war is just set off. It was literally, there needed to be a trigger, a spark, and this was it.
I am the angel of time.